We're back with a quick hit. This will be the final installment, probably not, with Jordan. I have a feeling she'll appear throughout the rest of our conversation about the Golden Bough. Thank you, Jordan, for sticking around through the first 100 pages of the Golden Bough.
Yeah, when I signed up, I thought we were doing one video. And yet, here we are, just so much to unpack.
Not only that, I figured we would be done with this in the month of January, and it is now May. So it looks like I'll be doing this for 2 or 3 years. But I'm getting a lot out of it. I've learned a lot so far, so we'll see how it goes. I'm moving at a pretty fast clip. So let's get into it, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. This presentation traces the evolution of magicians into kings as explored in the Golden Bough, Chapter 6, highlighting their rise through supernatural control over nature, the precarious risks of failure, and their shift to priestly roles across global cultures. For a bonus, we'll conclude by connecting sympathetic magic to germ theory, revealing its scientific legacy. Jordan, I think that's something that you and I have talked about both on the air and privately, how so much of at least one branch of sympathetic magic, specifically contagious magic, just etymologically seems to connect to germ theory. And what I'm trying to do is just revisit some subjects that we may have alluded to in passing, didn't have a full chance to explore, and just knocking them out when I can. So that'll come towards the end of this presentation.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I like these. I like this collage.
Yeah. Do you fear this spherical antigen or virus or whatever this is called? Is an antigen a virus?
Yeah, should I?
You should. You should.
Should I fear the sphere?
Fear the sphere. Antigen is a toxin or other foreign substance which induces an immune response of the body. Is a virus an antigen? This is dumb.
This is totally what we're here to talk about.
All right, okay. I just wanted to make sure I was right about that. A virus is an antigen, so I was not incorrect. That's twice today I have used rare words, and it's worked out in my favor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's go to slide 92. All right. So, in many societies, magicians believed to control natural forces like rain, crops, and health gain significant authority, often evolving into chiefs or kings. This process is rooted in the fear and wealth magicians amass through their perceived supernatural powers, particularly in societies where survival depended on natural phenomena. In primitive settings, such as among Australian Aborigines, elders performed magical rituals to ensure resources, laying the foundation for leadership. In regions like Africa, New Guinea, and the Malay Peninsula, rainmakers and medicine men became chiefs or kings by leveraging beliefs in their ability to influence nature, with rainmaking being a critical function. However, this role was precarious. Failure to deliver expected outcomes like rain or abundant harvests led to blame, punishment, or death, as seen in African tribes where chiefs were exiled, beaten, or killed during droughts. From Scythia to the Americas and Aryan cultures, kings were expected to regulate nature, facing consequences for failures, reinforcing the link between magical authority and kingship. Over time, as the limitations of magic become apparent, kings transitioned from direct magical practices to priestly roles, relying on prayer and sacrifice to appeal to gods, reflecting an intellectual shift from magic to religion. This evolution was accompanied by beliefs in the divine incarnation of kings, enhancing their authority as they were seen as vessels of divine power. And I'd like to talk about the images on the slide here, Jordan. I think when we talk about the Golden Bough, we're oftentimes looking at air quotes primitive societies, but this idea of there being a magical or priestly aura to the heads of state, endured into the British monarchy even into the 18th century. And I'm going to talk about this image right here. I got this from the Royal College of Physicians blog post. It's entitled "Touching the King's Evil: A Short History," which traces the historical practice of the royal touch. You have to tell me if you've ever heard of this, Jordan. Where English and French monarchs were believed to cure scrofula, a tuberculosis swelling of the neck's lymph glands, through touch. Originating with Edward the Confessor in 1042 to 1066, the ritual involved monarchs touching patients and later presenting gold coins called touch pieces or angels, as you see here, to wear as amulets symbolizing divine healing. The practice peaked under Charles II, who touched thousands, but waned after Queen Anne's final ceremony in 1714, dismissed by William III as superstition. Scrofula's spontaneous remission fueled belief in the cure, so I guess it worked for some people, reinforcing the monarch's divine legitimacy. Alternative treatments like figwort roots based on the doctrine of signatures were also used, reflecting pre-modern and medical beliefs. So what about that, Jordan? Had you ever heard of that, of a British king or queen touching and healing people with a tuberculosis-like disease?
I hadn't heard of that one. I'm familiar. Yeah. There's all of these references to kissing the king's hand.
I wonder if that's connected to that. Interesting.
I don't know. Or the ring, the crystal.
Yeah. There's and there's all sorts. That is a whole thing. There's standing on stones and stuff like this. There's a lot of lore that goes into the monarchs, and but maybe there's some trace of some healing power, and who knows? I mean, is Frazer right to connect these ideas, or is this, or did it happen in a more roundabout way? We've done the Gospel of Luke study, right? And there are many instances where people would touch Christ and be healed. And I think that very memorable passage where he's in a crowd and someone touches the hem of his garb and he's like, who's touched me? The virtue has gone out of my body. Right. And, but there was no movement there for him to become some sort of political leader or king in the traditional sense. So this might count in favor of René Girard's thesis that somehow Christianity annuls these Frazerian dialectical progresses of magic, religion, science. So something I've talked a little bit with HV on Realize Radio, but it's something I want to go more in depth with at a future presentation, specifically René Girard's The Scapegoat text. We'll see. There's a lot cooking if I can get to that.
Awesome.
Yeah. I like these little amulets too.
I do too.
Yeah. So
and St. Michael.
Yeah, St. Michael slaying the dragon. And here's Charles II here. I grabbed this from that article that I summarized. And if you want, here's the URL if anybody wants to go visit it.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the next couple slides, Jordan, are really just an index of all the next 4 slides. And so what we've been doing here is, I'm not going to go through all of them. They're all very interesting, but I've recorded them in a shorthand way. If we could start on slide 93. But these are just all instances of where the shaman, the sorcerer, the medicine man, the magician starts to gain power within his community, ascends, and then we have the consequences of their failure. Some of the instances that he talks about in this chapter, he doesn't talk about what happens if they fail. Others he does more explicitly. And so I would just take, if any of these pique your interest, go into chapter 6, and I would screenshot them for now if you can. and maybe just progress us through the next 4 slides, Jordan, because I did cite some examples in the summary at the outset of this presentation.
Yeah, I'm just going to give a few moments.
Yeah.
On each one.
Did anyone jump out at you while you're looking at it?
Locust jumps out. The Sultan's managing the rain and the locusts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just always struck by how many places and how many cultures these things span.
Well, it makes sense, right? Like it's intuitive. It makes sense that if you're a really good magician and your people fear and love you and for all the things that you can bestow or inflict upon them, it kind of makes sense why you would ascend. But of course, there's other functions within these primitive societies too, right? There's like the heroes, the warriors, and that's an interesting question, like how that shakes out. Like would that mean that you would want that sort of person ruling over you? I don't know.
Yeah.
No. Okay, so I think that pretty much accomplishes. Have you gone through all the slides? Yeah, there you go.
The last one.
Obviously, the one that jumped out the one that jumped out the most to me was the kiss, the people touching the king's hand or whatever that I mentioned at the start here. But specifically because it's so close to our modern day situation when the king was healing scrofula via touch. So let's go to slide 97, just to refresh our audience. We've talked a lot about sympathetic magic, but we've possibly not dwelt on this enough that there are 2 species. I mean, I try to, but so many of the different rituals as of late that we've looked at rely on imitative or homeopathic magic, because you can't you can't have like a piece of the sun to strengthen it. Like, so the closest thing you have is like fire, right? Or you can't like hold the wind and create some sort of connection between a part of the wind and the winds. But when we talk about disease, it gets a little bit different. So that gives us an opportunity to look at this other branch of sympathetic magic called contagious magic, which is based on the law of contact. So you can see this chart. We made this, I think, in the second or first video that we did. Jordan was, I'm in case no one knows this, like Jordan makes all the technical things happen for these nicer presentations, everything from the slides to the video and sound. So I believe she made this for me. And yeah, let's take that into the next slide if we can, Jordan. Slide 98.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you hadn't seen any of this, so.
No, but I know this scene.
What are we looking at here? Tell the people what we're looking at.
Oh, well, it's from 2001. I forget exactly what they're talking about, but I just am always throughout my life, I've been very fascinated by like government, and this gives a lot of Stargate vibes to me. Yeah.
Well, to me, I was looking at it. So what scene we're looking at here is when Floyd has put together this briefing to talk to the high-level military and space people that they've made this discovery of the monolith on the moon, right? And they have to concoct this cover story to keep people away from it and to possibly explain some of their actions, right? They come up with this propaganda piece that there has been an epidemic that has broken out on the moon base, right? And he says, this is from the original script. I understand that beyond it being a matter of principle, many of you are troubled by the concern and anxiety the story of an epidemic might cause your relatives and friends on Earth. So everybody's freaking out about a fake pandemic. Okay. So, and it's all very interesting too, because like count the different monoliths we have here. We have 3 horizontal monoliths, and then a fourth that is perpendicular to the ground, right? And so this really kind of brings home the idea that the monolith is somehow connected to the movie screens, and that there's something alchemical and mystical and magical happening, at least with a subset of films, hence the hyperfixation with Kubrick, because there seems to be, from my perspective, something way more than a movie happening here, right? Like we are in some ways being transmogrified by interacting with Kubrick's work, and perhaps other filmmakers as well. But this is a larger theory that I'm working on. But I thought it would just be a good backdrop to talk about disease and pandemics and what's going on there. So I think you wanted to
move on.
Yeah. And I have to be careful. I know you like to test the boundaries, but there are certain no things we're not allowed to talk about them, because
we haven't said any of the words.
We haven't, not yet, but certain no things. Okay.
Well, let's get into it.
All right. Well, what did you want to say? I find it
interesting that within 2001 we also have, so yes, they decided to illustrate the monoliths as like not screens. You know what I mean? Like they're blank.
Right. So the original idea was to kind of make them like giant iPads, like to make the idea was Kubrick was going to project images onto them that would have taught the monkeys and taught the humans like certain knowledge that would have aided in their gnosis and evolution. But he thought that was like too obvious. So he went with just this artifact, which is kind of mystifying and people don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. You also, though, have iPads in the movie.
Yeah,
they're not called that.
No. Yeah, you have
a lot of the interfacing with reality is through a screen. When you have the scene with like the birthday telecall, he's connecting with his family via the screen pad.
Yep.
But it just makes me think of today, and like this is just hilarious that they have this cover story and we're receiving all of this through our own mini monoliths in our own lives, in our pockets. Maybe this is obvious to everybody, but
oh yeah. Oh, I meant to say this because Dr. Strangelove is your favorite Kubrick movie.
Yeah, probably.
And I don't know why it didn't dawn on me sooner, but this scene where Floyd is running the meeting about the fake pandemic or the epidemic, it has Strangelove vibes to it. Not really in the sense like, how they're all huddled around that circular table, coming up with a plan for what they're doing with this unprecedented scenario. It kind of harkens back to that. I think there's probably something deeper there that needs to be toyed with, but that jumped out at me today.
I don't know if anyone's done like Model UN or anything like that, but it's just interesting to me how many of these scenario planning or simulations that people do, like you'll pretend that an event is happening or pretends that your different nation states collaborating on something. And it makes me curious how blurry the line may be between those quote simulations and then like the real stuff that's supposedly happening.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like just all these tables of military people presumably in both movies is interesting.
Definitely. All right.
And potential psyops in both scenarios.
Yeah, potential.
You don't like me.
All right, yeah. All right. All right, I'm going to read a little bit here, and if you,
Okay.
let's keep. I think the visual is good, but you can toggle back and forth between slide 98 and 99. The 99 kind of just sums up what I'm going to read here, but
Okay.
in general, I'd like to stay on the image. But if
Yeah.
you give people an opportunity to screenshot that, they can. All right. So in the Golden Bough, James George Frazer defined contagious magic as a form of sympathetic magic where objects or people, once in contact, remain linked through an invisible ether, allowing influence over one another, such as using a person's hair in rituals to affect them. This concept, rooted in the belief that contact leaves a lingering essence, parallels germ theory's principle that invisible microorganisms transferred through contact cause disease. The cultural familiarity of contagious magic's focus on contact based harm likely facilitated the 19th century acceptance of germ theory, as both frameworks grapple with unseen agents spreading effects across physical connections. This resonance underscores a shared human intuition about transmission, which remains relevant in modern disease contexts. Psychological research, particularly by Paul Rosen, reveals how contagious magic's logic persists in contemporary contamination fears. Rosen's studies show that people avoid objects associated with negative sources, like a washed sweater worn by a reviled person, reflecting a belief in a persistent essence akin to magical thinking. These disgust-driven responses align with germ theory's emphasis on avoiding microbial spread, a connection amplified during the COVID-19 pandemic. A 2024 study noted heightened aversion to contact-based payments due to perceived contamination, mirroring contagious magic's fear of harmful residues. Such behaviors, such that Frazer's framework continues to shape how people intuitively respond to disease risks, blending magical heuristics with scientific caution. The COVID-19 pandemic vividly illustrated how Frazer's contagious magic informs our understanding of germ theory by highlighting the persistence of pre-scientific beliefs in navigating invisible threats. Public health practices like hand washing and surface avoiding echo magical purification rituals, reflecting a deep-seated fear of lingering harm through contact. While germ theory provides a scientific basis, its cultural traction partly stems from its alignment with contagious magic's intuitive principles, as scholars like Rosen and Tome suggest. This synthesis reveals that our response to pandemics blends empirical knowledge with a primal, Frazerian sense of contagion, underscoring the enduring influence of magical thinking in modern health behaviors. So, the resources that I used to put that together are here on the screen. I mentioned Paul Rosen and his article, Operation of the Laws of Sympathetic Magic in Disgust and Other Domains. Nancy Tome's article, The Gospel of Germs, Men, Women, and the Microbe in American Life from Harvard University Press. And then this article from ResearchGate, Emo Decision-Making Contagion, Exploring Emotional and Behavioral Influence of Consumer Behavior During COVID-19. I mean, Jordan, I don't think it should be too surprising to us that, I mean, that seems really intuitive. Like there is this ancient magical practice based on the law of contagion. I mean, you see it, you know, it's amazing. You, like we were talking about reading the Bible and stuff like that. There's all sorts of purification rituals in the Bible. There's something very intuitive about it. So, you know, there's the precedent set up, whether or not they actually believed in viruses or bacteria or anything like that. I guess they didn't. I guess we have a better understanding of where they got these rituals from, if they're using primitive magic or proto-religion or whatever else. But it makes, if that's already a natural occurring thing, where what Frazer has shown through his documentation that really wherever you go, this progression from magic to religion to science crops up, it really shouldn't be that surprising to us that when modern science comes along with germ theory, it can just kind of take over that magical instinct. But what's curious, and we all saw it during COVID is how much ritual was involved. I mean, you had nurses doing dances. Now they, or the 6 feet apart, or
There were a lot of things that were
wearing
performative.
or wearing masks. Like, like it's all,
Yeah.
you could easily make the critique that it had a ritualistic vibe to it.
Yeah, we weren't all wearing hazmat suits and respirators.
Which is what you should do. That's what.
Yeah, if you have Ebola, like.
Yeah, that's what you should do. If you don't want to get sick, that's what you ought to have done.
When you mentioned the Bible, and there could be many reasons for this, Yeshua wasn't afraid to touch anyone.
Nope. No, he was not. And that again kind of.
But other people were.
Yes, they were.
So this disgust instinct is not new. It's interesting how it plays out in different ways. I can even remember as a kid not wanting to like touch things that someone who, like, in hindsight, I'm like, that was kind of messed up that I was having these feelings of disgust towards someone, but I would like avoid like touching their backpack or things like that.
Interesting.
I was like very small. There wasn't a lot of logic to it, but it's an interesting theme in humanity.
The thought occurred to me right before we went on here. I mean, this is something because I talk to you about it a lot, but I mean, I'm not really ashamed to say this. I've suffered with OCD pretty much since I was like 4 years old. It's been it goes through varying degrees of strength, and to this day, like hand washing is something I do a lot. Like even coming on here to do this video to like feel right and clean and ready, I had to like wash my hands a bunch. And I was thinking,
you told me you will tell me, hey, I'm gonna go do my OCD ritual.
Right. Well, I wonder if that's like some remnant, like some ancestral like is OCD just like the endurance of like an ancestral memory of my magician progenitors? Like do I just really have this intuitive inclination to practice ritual, to practice magic, and I'm not doing it consciously, so that it comes out as a compulsion, it comes out as OCD? Like I wonder how much like of this particular mental disorder that I seem to have is a result of not doing the magic that my ancestors from 10,000 years ago might have been doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's all very fear driven, it seems. If I don't do X, disastrous outcome is going to happen.
Sure.
And maybe there was an actual trauma that occurred in the ancestral line, or maybe just collectively. I don't know.
Well, if that's true, then you've got something like blood memory. You've got like something that's imprinted and handed down and is causing like mental disorders or whatever because it's not properly dealt with.
I think that's a aspect.
Yeah, I mean that's what's interesting to me. So
yeah.
So anyhow, I just thought
it's interesting. It's interesting how a lot of these magical ideas, or even I forget where it came from, but you were telling me the design of the atom, the model of the atom, is based off of some philosophical theory.
Oh, I mean,
at least has a lot of, it was like someone was inspired by that.
Yeah, I mean, there was lots of different speculations about. I mean, the ancient Greeks were speculating what reality was made up of, and then, they had debates about it. There being like the word atom, I believe, is a Greek word, and they would. Was it Democritus? Let's check. Good thing we have music when we put these videos together.
Yeah, I'm jamming out to 888 hertz in my headphones.
Oh, that's right. So I filling those voids of speech. Yeah, it was Democritus and Leucippus are credited with developing the idea that all matter is composed of tiny, indivisible particles, which they called atoms. But I mean, clearly they didn't have a way to empirically verify that there were atoms. And truthfully, our techniques of verifying atoms today are not quite as ironclad as people think. That's a whole thing. Yeah. So seeing atoms, they're real tiny. Real tiny. So it raises very interesting questions about how you can have a knowledge of atoms. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not super prepared to do that, but I encourage people
of all sizes. Spheres of all sizes.
It's all about a sphere. It's all about, you've got to believe in all the different spheres, and ultimately this is, I think, a very Greek and Kabbalistic sort of idea. But it's spheres, it's globes, it's particles, it's atoms, things of this nature. That's sphere. And ultimately, I think it comes from a theological view that perhaps God is a sphere. Let me see. Let me
verify.
Yeah, let me just see who might have said that. I know Borges talks about it somewhere, but I want to go to the source. In ancient Greek mythology, the concept of God as a sphere is primarily associated with Atlas, who is believed to hold the celestial sphere on his shoulders as a punishment. I'm looking for philosophy or esoteric. It's like philosophers like Xenophanes or Xenophanes describe God as a spherical, eternal being encompassing all things. Pythagoreans also associated the sphere with the monad, the supreme being. So, let me get you an image too.
Ooh,
this
okay.
is the monad from. I'll put it in the chat. This is a very famous, like, esoteric and metaphysical symbol. You could pull that up.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple, but this is like something that in these philosophical systems comes to represent God or the totality of reality, I believe. So I think this insistence on the spherical nature of everything can be traced back to the Pythagorean monad, perhaps.
Is this what you wanted to look at?
Yeah. So
this is the glyph too for the sun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, probably why you have so much sun worship. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of layers of meaning to the symbol.
Yep.
Could have a whole presentation on that.
It can. But as far as today, I'm done. I don't know if you want to show them did you get a chance to show them the final slide after this one? Just so if they wanted to screenshot.
Is this last one?
Right there. Where that pretty much sums up what I read. Right.
Mm-hmm.
How they're alike, and then how ultimately this manifested in regards to COVID. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like maybe our awareness or concepts of the mechanism will continue to expand. You know, the way that we view contagion today may be very different than the way we view it in the future.
I think you can bet on it.
There seems to be something there.
I think you can bet on it. It's I don't know exactly what to say about this, but it seems like the scientific understanding. It'd be interesting, like, who's the successor to Frazer? Let's say like the success, like Frazer's dialectical unfolding here is correct. It does seem to me that the materialist scientific naturalism perspective is starting to disintegrate, and it's giving way to a new type of understanding of magic. It's like, well, are we circling back around to this primitive science or magic? You know, everybody talks about like the quantum being magical, right?
Sure.
or if we're just realizing that modern science was an epistemological framework to kind of help us deal with the chaos of reality, and we're realizing that our paradigms cannot appropriately match with the incomprehensible. So something new is giving birth, is something new is being born, and I'm not exactly sure what our frameworks are going to be when that happens. So, all right, well, I'm ready to call it a night. I got a workout still to get.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
thanks, Luke. This was fun.
All right. Thank you, Jordan.